Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalists Roundtable. We'll look at the week's top stories, including the state joining more lawsuits against actions by the Trump administration. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Journalists Roundtable. And joining us tonight, Jeremy Duda of Axios Phoenix. And we would like to note that Jeremy's wife is an employee of Arizona PBS. Also joining us tonight, Cameron Sanchez of KJZZ Radio. And also with us, and also from KJZZ, Wayne Schutsky. Panel, good to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Jeremy, we'll start with you. I guess we just should pick which order and which order that's the Attorney General has joined other Attorneys General in basically going after. We'll do the election one because that seems like it's the most recent. What's this all about?
All right, we'll start lawsuit fest with the election.
There we go.
President Trump, I believe it was last week, signed yet another executive order. This one on elections. It does a number of things. The most significant to Arizona is that it tries to order the Federal Election Assistance Commission to add a requirement on federal voter registration forms that you have a documented proof of citizenship. Now, this is something we're real familiar with here in Arizona because we have this bifurcated system with federal-only voters. You know, voters you don't have to show documented proof of citizenship on the federal form like you do on the state one. So, filed on the federal one, you only get to vote in federal races. Donald Trump wants, I'm not sure how familiar he is with that system, but he just wants this, he wants that to go away. He wants this on the federal system. There's some other stuff on early ballots have to be there by the close of polls on election day, which is, I think, more relevant to a lot of other states because we already kind of have that rule. But the proof of citizenship one, this is a very interesting one. And Chris Mays is one of, I think, 19, 20, it's a different number for every lawsuit.
Yes.
Suing,
yes.
Saying this is basically a usurpation of congressional power. The president doesn't have the authority to basically rewrite election laws on his own, which she's claiming this executive order is purporting to do.
Yeah, joined 18 other states here. Chris May saying that the administration, out of control, executive branch, hell-bent on destroying 250 years of precedents.
She's never subtle.
No.
And she loves a good lawsuit, and so do I, which is great because I think we're going to see a lot of looming lawsuits stemming from this. As Jeremy mentioned, changing things like deadlines and requirements for voters could have a huge effect on upcoming elections. People could be affected in a variety of different ways. They may not have shown everything they needed to vote because in previous years they hadn't needed to, or people could be going to vote at the wrong time, ballots not being counted. That's doomsday, and presuming that things happen before then, we're going to try to avoid that. But everyone's going to be in, I think, a little bit of a panic for the time being to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that's the worst case scenario. That
end by 7 p.m., yeah, I get it. We're kind of there anyway. But the Attorney General said, to make that a requirement, a federal requirement, that's going to hurt Arizona's early voting system.
Yeah, she said it creates concerns with what we call ballot curing. So people who vote by mail, you put a signature on there to verify who you are. If they can't read that signature, it doesn't match with your voter file, those kinds of things, the county has a few days after the election to actually go back and contact you and be like, make sure this was you, and have your vote counted. She said that requirement creates a little bit of confusion because if it has to have everything in by election day, are we still allowed to go out after the fact and cure those ballots? And she pointed to her own election that she won by less than 300 votes as a reason why curing ballots is important. We have a lot of close elections in this state. And as Jeremy mentioned, even though we already have a documented proof of citizenship requirement here, she said that can also still affect Arizona voters because the list of valid forms of identification in Trump's order is different than the list of forms of identification allowed in Arizona's law. So like tribal IDs, for instance, aren't allowed under Trump's order. Right.
And we should mention Secretary of State Adrian Fontes got involved here as well as far as the announcement is concerned, and basically saying that what the president did just basically makes elections less secure.
Certainly, that's the argument a lot of folks make, is that there's reasons that these laws that exist. There's a reason that they are the way they are. I mean, the federal form that was meant to make voting accessible to as many people as possible, and by adding this form, we know from experience here in Arizona, there's reasons why people who are citizens might not have that proof of citizenship. College students who are from out of state who don't have access to the documents they need. Tribal folks who, Native Americans who might not have, the right documents. So, and as Wayne mentioned, this throws a lot of things kind of into confusion if this were to actually go into effect in terms of how is it going to be enforced and things like that.
Yeah, and it basically federalizes state elections. I mean, I shouldn't say state elections. It federalizes all elections and a responsibility that the states once had.
And Fontes is certainly using this as a reason for him to stay in his current role. I mean, there were speculation about him going for Congress, and he was saying this order is a reason that he needs to stay where he is because it's going to be him fighting the good fight. And I can see it being part of his campaign, too, saying exactly that. You know, like, we need to protect states' rights. We need to make the law clear. We need to protect voters from being disenfranchised by policies that shouldn't be able to, you know, be unilaterally made by the president, which is a fluctuating position.
Yes. And Wayne, correct me here. Is it all elections? I mean, would state elections still be bound by these rules?
I believe it is applying to federal elections.
That's what I thought. Okay,
this
only.
rule. And you know, 10 years ago, if you would have told me we would have seen 2 Democrats up there defending states' rights against a Republican administration, you know, I might not have believed you. But as you mentioned, you know, the Constitution really reserves most election procedures to the states, with some powers going to Congress, but as Mays said, it doesn't really give much power to the executive.
Yeah, unconstitutional overreach by presidential and by the president and his presidential power. And basically, she said, I think the claim said, that his role is limited to competing and enforcing laws enacted by Congress.
Well, that is the you know, balance of powers that we have in the federal system. You know, the Congress makes the laws. You know, the National Voter Registration Act, where this federal form comes from in the first place, this is from federal law. You know, as with, you know, countless other things over the past few months, you see President Trump really trying to expand the power of the executive and kind of set Congress off to the side and say, I don't need you, I can do this on my own.
Yeah, and Cameron, that's not the only lawsuit that the Attorney General joined in. We had joined 22 other states in suing Health and Human Services and Director Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over public health cuts.
Yes, because we're going to be losing a lot of funding potentially, and obviously our Attorney General is concerned about that and wants to protect our funding. It's not the only thing. Again, I expect to see more lawsuits along these lines. We're not the only state that's concerned about it. It greatly affects potentially our state budget as well, I think. I mean, when we're talking about negotiations for what we need in terms of our health system, it coincides a lot with the federal health system. So.
Yeah, and a judge put a temporary block on this one, correct?
Yeah, because I mean, and the argument in a lot of these lawsuits goes back to, like, this was money appropriated by Congress. The executive can't unilaterally cut it out without Congress saying so. And yeah, this is money, this is hundreds of millions of dollars set to the state a lot for rural counties, for their public health administrations, for vaccines, which we know is obviously a hot button issue for RFK. But yeah, so essentially all of it goes back is to what power does the executive have versus what power does Congress have versus what power does the state have. But ultimately it's up to the judiciary to delineate that and see whether the executive even listens.
I just think it's a little bit funny because at the state level with the legislature and the governor's office, because we have a Republican legislature and a Democratic governor right now, there's often this fight in reverse that you hear. Like, Katie Hobbs is trying to create laws through her executive branch, and her agencies are acting outside of their authority, and you should be going through the state legislature. But in this case, of course, it's the Democrats who are mad about Trump.
Yeah. And Jeremy, we should also mention that, again, the Attorney General, no loss for words here, reckless decision, no legally valid explanation for these cuts.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is kind of copy and paste for all these different lawsuits. Is, most of them come down to the same issues. Like, does the president have the authority to do this without Congress, or to counteract something that has already been approved by Congress?
Yeah, and again, this would impact Arizona quite a bit. I've seen everything from $190 million to maybe even more when you add on cuts to Medicaid. This is stuff that this is real business here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all learned during COVID that our counties are kind of our front line when it comes to public health. And even when we're not in the midst of a pandemic, they do play a huge role in ensuring, that people have access to basic health necessities. Sometimes we forget about that in Maricopa County, but I think it's even more acute in some of our smaller rural counties where people don't have access to so many doctors' offices and hospitals and things like that. And a lot of these grants are going towards those rural counties and their health systems.
At the least, we're seeing a lot of confusion out there about this order. Even though it's been temporarily blocked, people are trying to gear up as to what could happen.
When you turn a spigot off and turn it back on and turn it back off, a lot of government spending is planned. And so just because there's a temporary hold put on this order, that doesn't mean that the public health administrators can just start spending that money again. They have to kind of plan as if it's not there until they get more definitive answers.
And let's keep it going as far as the Attorney General joining other attorneys general, this time joining 18 other states in this suit to stop President Trump from the mass firings of probationary workers and these sorts of things.
I like it when she does this because we get to say attorneys general, and
Yes.
normally I don't get to do that.
Yes.
But yes, once again, can he do that? Should he do that? How does it affect Arizona? Are people going to be out, looking for work on the street? Is it fair to them? Who is it affecting? And I think what all of this does, even though I don't mean to accuse anyone of being political, is it does breed some good headlines for Democrats. People are sick and they can't get medicine. People are out on, veterans have no jobs anymore because of this evil person. And I think that if and when Mays or Fontes or whoever decides to run for their office again, they're for sure going to be pointing this out and saying, hey, I was hosting town halls. Hey, I was filing lawsuits. What were you doing?
Yeah.
And we've seen that from Mays from basically the early days after the election, is that she planted her flag as the opposition to Trump here in Arizona. Katie Hobbs has taken a much more measured approach to what we're seeing out of the White House. No measured approach to speak of from the Attorney General's office, and gung-ho pretty much every chance she's gotten.
And I believe this is the 9th lawsuit against Trump's actions so far. Although, I don't know, anything happened here recently?
It was yesterday's election lawsuit was the 9th, so I believe there was a 10th
There was a 10th today. Okay, there we go.
That the Attorney General signed on to with other attorneys general that had to do with funding for libraries, museums, and things like that. That's also being cut.
So, since you brought up the political aspect of all this, what is the political fallout? What is a political benefit or the opposite reaction for Attorney General Mays?
I mean, in terms of her negatively benefiting from it or
Both.
positively benefiting?
Both.
Well, I mean, the Republicans I've seen who are really pro-Trump are saying this is exactly what we wanted. There's too much bloat. People are crying and clutching their pearls because they're used to, being fat cats. But this is actually just the first stage of a really great system. And I think Trump said something along the lines of, this is going great with the stock market stuff. It will level out. It will be fine. This is still what we're going for. I could see if things do turn around, maybe that could be part of her opposition's campaign against her, saying that she was too liberal and gung-ho, like Jeremy said. But in the meantime, I think that she's really riding a wave of momentum right now.
You agree with that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's counting on Trump being unpopular and the Republicans being unpopular next year. It'll be a midterm with the Republican in the White House, which traditionally means, voters will kind of go the other way. We'll have to see how much, if the news, over the next year looks like the news of the past week economically, she may be, that might have been a smart bet on her part. There's so much, how much happens on a weekly basis from daily basis out of the Trump administration. So what things are going to look like in a year and a half from now, who knows? But Chris Mays is definitely banking on people not wanting to vote for folks aligned with Trump.
Wayne, Senator Jake Hoffman is not pleased with the superintendent of public instruction. This is a little Republican on Republican.
Yeah, this one kind of surprised me. Senator Hoffman's the leader of kind of this far-right Freedom Caucus group at the legislature, and has been getting more involved in running his own candidates for various, whether they're state political party positions or actual elected positions. And the most recent one he said is he wants someone to run against Tom Horn, who is our Republican superintendent. And his big criticism was he said that Tom Horn is the biggest threat to the school voucher program in the state, which is surprising considering that the superintendent is a huge defender of the school voucher program, big fan of it, and has been a big fan of school choice for decades.
Single greatest threat to ESAs. How did he make that work?
He didn't mince words. I mean, he said that, and I was at the little gaggle where he said it, and we asked him to follow up, and he said, no, thank you. And so we don't know exactly, but there has been some Twitter fighting since that conversation, which has sort of expanded, I think, the explanation about it. And I also spoke to Horn afterwards to be like, do you know what he's talking about? What's your response to this? Horn defended himself, and he said, well, yes, of course, I'm a defender of the ESA program. I support school choice. I support the vouchers. But I do believe, in what I've done, which is rejecting some ridiculous stuff like a Rolex.
Yes.
Because if I had done that, it would have been a horrible headline for us and our party and our campaign. And it's also not my job. We have to do things that are good for students academically, and it has to be at a reasonable cost. And I think his point is that the Freedom Caucus wants no limits
Yeah,
period.
Horn has proposed spending caps, has he not?
Caps on certain types of expenditures, just rejections of certain other types of expenditures. As Cameron mentioned, you see these extravagant expenditures out of the ESA program that have very dubious educational value, and you get a bunch of headlines, and the Democrats stand up in the legislature and start yelling about how horrible they think this program is, which they've hated from the beginning, which Tom Horn has been defending this program from the beginning. I think we all we remember when this first came up, and he was very supportive of it from the beginning, but there's limits on how much you can spend on computers within a certain number of years, or musical instruments, other types of equipment, and then just outright rejections of things like, I think you mentioned like a $24,000 golf simulator or something like that. So, I mean, it's hard to argue that those types of expenditures aren't bad for the program and from a public perception standpoint.
But there's one thing to say, we don't agree on this and we need to work this out. It's another just to come out publicly and say you're the single greatest threat.
Well, Jake Hoffman's never been accused of, downplaying a situation, or he, like we've said, he's running candidates in many of these statewide races. So this is obviously a shot across the bow. Does Jake Hoffman personally actually believe that Tom Horn is the single greatest threat? Probably not, but it made a good headline, and it got the headlines written, and now it gives him the opening to go propose a candidate of his own to take on Horn.
And who could that candidate be?
We were speculating about that. I don't know yet, but I think it's more of a trend. I think it goes even broader because obviously the way that Hoffman announced this was at a gaggle following a press conference where he announced that Colladin is the candidate he wants to put up for Secretary of State. And he kind of indicated that he might want to put up someone for treasurer of his own. So it's not just Tom Horn that he's going after. It's really, as Wayne said at the beginning of this part of the conversation, I think it's like everything that the Freedom Caucus wants to put their candidate in. And that could be a disaster potentially for the Republican Party, because if they succeed in the primary, as we saw way back whenever the last Hobbs election was, that didn't work out so well for the Republicans in the general.
Yeah, Jake Hoffman, kingmaker?
I think he's certainly hoping so. I mean, these candidates in the primary, these, MAGA, Freedom Caucus, Trump-aligned candidates, tend to do very well. Trump is still, and has been for years, popular with the base. That Trump endorsement is still gold in a primary. As Cameron mentioned, general election, much different story. And, people might have some buyer's remorse depending on how some of those primaries turn out, depending on, what happens in the general.
So Hoffman's handpicked candidate for Maricopa County Recorder, Justin Heath, obviously did win election, so he was bolstered by that, and I think he's trying to build off of that momentum with some of these more recent comments.
Jeremy, back to you here. There are varied measures at the legislature now to raise the pay or the per diem or just something for state lawmakers. What's going on?
Well, these folks do not make a heck of a lot of money, as we saw a few weeks ago when Senator Eva Birch resigned, citing money. These pay raises generally have to be approved by the voters. The voters have not been so keen on doing that. The last time they did so was 1998. Some lawmakers want to give them another opportunity next year, not to raise their salary itself, but to index it to inflation. And just for fun, you say, well, we're going to see, that's going to be retroactive to the last time voters approved a pay raise, which was 1998. That would effectively double this $24,000 a year salary to about $48,000. And then there is per diem, which is where a lot of, it can get pretty lucrative, the daily money that these folks get for travel, food, et cetera. If you're from outside of Maricopa County, from rural Arizona, it can be a lot of money. They raised that a few years ago. Some of these people have to travel 5 hours to get to the Capitol. Folks in Maricopa County say, why not us too, even though you may just have to travel a few miles. So this would increase that to, I think, around 200 a day, which would be pretty good. I think the Arizona Mirror did the math last year, and that the Maricopa County lawmakers get about $5,700 per session per diem. The out of Maricopa County, I think it averages 40-something per session. So even though they don't necessarily have the same travel expenditures, they want to increase that, and that can be done legislatively.
So two questions here. On the first one, voters going to go for that idea of, basically doubling pay, and secondly, the idea of the governor because I think the second one, the per diem, is a bill. Is the governor going to go for the idea of raising per diem from like $35 or whatever it is to $200 a day, all day, every day, 7 days a week?
If it passes with voters, I don't think it'll be overwhelmingly, because I think they'll see through sort of it's just tied to inflation. Like, I mean, voters are going to understand. I think that that is still a 100% pay increase, which sounds great to me. That's not, small potatoes if you're being offered that. And I think there is something to be said, though, for having it, but voters don't seem to ever really care that much about those arguments. Like, you get what you pay for, you want lawmakers who actually represent you, not just those who are independently wealthy. All that stuff in the past hasn't worked out very well, so I'm a little bit nervous for the proponents of it, because I think that it's going to come across as, once again, lawmakers trying to grab cash for themselves.
Yeah, and for Diem, the governor, how do you think she would handle something like that?
I don't know. I mean, she's doing fine, so I think it depends on if she thinks it'll be good for her campaign in a lot of ways, I think. And I don't know that she wants to be seen as the one who's handing out money to her friends.
I would say, she is a former lawmaker, one who has very publicly said she has struggled to pay her bills at times, so I think she could be sympathetic on that end. However, right now she's in a very public fight with the Republicans over funding for children with disabilities, and her allies in the legislature, the Democrats down there, have made a point to say Republicans want to approve this funding, but they're trying to get themselves a pay raise. So that would seem to indicate to me that it's maybe not popular on that side of the aisle.
The art of the deal going on here, maybe?
Well, when Doug Ducey signed this a few years ago for the out of Maricopa lawmakers, there was a pretty good argument to be made, because some of these folks, they're constantly on the road, traveling a long time. If you're in Maricopa County, though, and obviously it's a very large county, but you might live a few miles from the Capitol. Katie Hobbs' district was, I think, included in the Capitol, so she was pretty close by. Why, I think a lot of voters might look at her and say, okay, why do you think someone who lives 10 miles from the Capitol and can, drive there in 10 minutes should get, $200 a day for that?
Cameron, former Senator Watsack is back in the news again, and for the same reason she's been in the news quite a bit here lately. She's now suing the city of Tucson for political persecution.
Yeah, because she was speeding a lot. She was going like 75 and a 35 months ago. We all read about it, because when she got pulled over, she said, "I'm a lawmaker, you can't do this to me." They waited, they gave her the ticket. She said she shouldn't have to pay it. She took it to court. The court said, no, you don't get special privileges to break the law. It was the subject of a whole bill that came up at the legislature, and now she's saying to the city, or the court, I guess, that the city owes her millions of dollars in damages, and that it affected her campaign because she ran against Leach and lost to him and got a lot of bad press from this whole situation.
All part of a plan, apparently, according to the claim, to ruin her reputation. $8 million, Wayne, she wants.
Yeah, she cites a report by the Tucson Sentinel down there that basically said that the video was leaked to them or something of that nature. So she's arguing that that's part of a coordinated effort by Tucson PD to frame her up. Now, I don't know how she defends that they forced her to speed, but
she says she wasn't
or
speeding.
that she wasn't speeding, I guess. But yeah, it's basically, I think it's going to go just about as well as her attempt to get out of the ticket, which ultimately it got dismissed because she went to, she took her diversion course, as the rest of us who have gotten speeding tickets in Arizona have done. Could have been wrapped up, sewn up months and months ago, but it's always good to have an excuse when you lose an election. So.
Yeah, I think the strangest part of a very strange lawsuit, when I was looking through it, is she claimed that, of course, she claimed that she wasn't speeding. She claimed she was pulled over as part of this conspiracy against her. They said, we're going to pull over Justine Watsack to hurt her career. No explanation, even a couple of words on how some random Tucson Police Department patrol officer knew that this car that was allegedly going 71 miles an hour belonged to a state legislator, let alone one that they didn't like, as if they were like following her with a helicopter or something, waiting for her to get off of I-10. Say, okay, she's in Tucson PD jurisdiction now. Let's go get her.
Yeah, that's part of the plan, Jeremy.
Must have been.
Yeah.
I guess it'll be fun to watch this in court up and until the point where I'm guessing it probably gets thrown out before going to trial.
We'll keep an eye on that one. Wayne, is this going to be fun watching Alexander Culloden run for Secretary of State?
Fun, yeah. I guess if you're an observer of Arizona politics, it will be fun for you. In some ways, it could be a bit of a rerun of the last time when we saw Mark Finchem take on Adrian Fontes, because Finchem and Culloden have shared a lot of similar disproven theories of election fraud, and that's going to be, I think, a big part of this election. Now, Culloden may want to start shying away from those, as they're not very popular with the general electorate. However, it's going to be difficult because there's a lot been written up about it.
How can you shy away when you claimed massive fraud in the 2020 election?
He's been a party to a lot of election fraud cases. I think he defended fake electors. He was in the Kraken lawsuit. He's been sanctioned. He got a slap on the wrist from the state bar. And he really started off this campaign giving reporters a brick wall. We asked him about a lot of that stuff. We asked him, do you think that the elections are safe and secure? Do you think that Biden won in 2020? Do you think that Katie Hobbs won in 2022? What do you think about the executive order? What do you think about the president's ability to do this and that? And he just kept saying, next question. I think he said it at least 10 times. I tried to write them all down, but then I had to do other stuff. And so, I think maybe his strategy is to just ignore all of that and just move forward from it, but it's hard to not think about it and bring it up because it was a big deal.
What is the Republican strategy having Alexander Culloden as a candidate for Secretary of State?
I guess it depends on which Republican, because he may not be the nominee. We have a potential candidate waiting in the wings to challenge him in the primary, one whose endorsement he inaccurately claimed to have going into the race. Gina Swoboda, the chair of the Arizona Republican Party, his announcement video was all about how she had endorsed him, and with clips of her endorsing him for previous legislative races and stuff like that. I think we all walked away. We all knew that she'd been considering the race. We think we all walked away from this press conference, and Senator Texter gave her a call, and she said, no, absolutely not. I'm not endorsing for Secretary of State. I'm considering a run myself. So I think that a lot of Republicans who maybe look at Culloden and say, maybe we don't want to try this again and go in the general election or line up behind her.
Yay or nay? It's all we got time for. Will someone else join Mr. Culloden, Representative Culloden, in the race?
Yeah, I think Ms. Swoboda will get in.
All right, that's enough time for that one. Panel, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.